Okay, hello everybody, and I'm just going to do some Blender stuff real quick. I'm going to do some very basic tutorials. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but yeah, I'm not going to get to too much. I just want to get people familiar with what you need to know. So this is the default scene. You got a lamp, camera, and a cube. Now, to select things, you right-click. So just right-click on the thing you want, and it'll go. Up here is the outliner. It just shows all your items, and you left-click on them to select it there. Then here you have your visibility, so I can turn that off. What does that do? Not sure. But, and then this is renderability. So if this is off, then it won't render when you render it out. And that's it. So anyways, here we have our cube. And to grab it or move it, you hit G, and then that makes it go around. Now if you want to lock it to an axis, you hit the corresponding axis button. So if I wanted to, cancel your grab or anything, it's a right click. So I hit G, and then I hit X because I want to move it on the X-axis, Y if I want to hit it on the Y-axis, and Z if I want to move it on the Z-axis. And also, while you're doing that, let's say I want to do that, hold Control, and it will use your current snap setting. And so, right now mine is in increment, which is the grid. So yeah, that's how you move an object. For scale or size, it is S. So you can scale it up and down, just moving your mouse, and right click to cancel that, or left click to, keep it. And then pretty much every other program uses Control Z to undo. And then you can also scale on a specific axis, like that, like that. Now rotating, you can rotate on the X, rotate on the Y, rotate on the Z. Now something that's kind of cool is if you rotate it on the X, say you want something like that for some reason, you can come down here and change this to local, or you can just hit grab, so you can grab it on the X-axis, or grab it on the Y, but if you hit Y again, it changes it to the local Y-axis, so you can move it according to that face, and same with Z, it'll go like that, and X didn't change because I rotated on the X-axis. So, I'm just gonna come over here. This is your basic properties panel. You can toggle it with N, and I come up to my rotation here and set it to 0, and it brings it back to the default place. Or I could have also done Shift S and selection to cursor, and this is the 3D cursor. Left click to move it, and then if you do Shift C, it moves that back to the center. Or I think Shift S cursor to center works as well. So that's just how you manipulate an object. Now, I'm going to start to get into making a basic rigid body scene. So I'm going to move the cube up, hit Shift A, and go to the Mesh tab and add a plane. Scale it up. Alright. And I'm going to go into Cycles Render for this. So this lamp is pretty much useless in Cycles. It's not completely useless, but most of the time Cycles will use objects for lamps. So just make a basic plane here. Oh, I didn't go over the views. One, what is that? Is that front view? Hold on. Front, yeah, okay. So 5 on the number pad, make sure you have num lock on, is to switch to orthographic, which is essentially if you're an infinity distance away, what it would look like. And then 1, which we're in now, is your front view, 3 is your right view, and 7 is your top view. So then if you go Control 1, it goes to back view, Control 3 goes to left view, and Control 7 goes to bottom view. And if you go back to 1, 2 increments it like this, so you can go all the way around. And then, oh wait, 2 is for down, 4 is for left, 6 is for right, and 8 is for up. So you can just do it in increments instead of having to do that. And I didn't even go over navigating this. Control and, no, not control. Middle mouse click is to rotate it. Shift middle mouse click is to go like this. Pan, if you will. Scroll to zoom, just like that. So yeah, that's how you essentially move it. And yeah, so now I'm going to set up the seam. I'm going to go to top view orthographic so it doesn't shift on the z-axis. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 here, rotate it that way so it's facing the cube. Then I'm going to scale it up. Let's rotate it that way a little bit. And then add a new material. Oh, this is the properties panel, so you have your object selected and you have all of these properties up here. Physics, particle system. So, I'm just gonna make, and then you go to surface, and you select emission, and you can change the color. I'm gonna make it all red. This is just RBGA, so you can change the alpha to, and the strength, which I'm gonna change to 2, and no displacement because you won't be able to see it even if you add it. Mine, yeah. I'm gonna go back to perspective here, and now I'm gonna select my floor plane. And I'm going to do something kind of cool for this. I'm going to go glossy, which is like a mirror. Actually, you have a preview up here of what it's going to look like. And I'm going to go to sharp because it's sharp. And for displacement, I'm going to go to Voronoi texture. And I like the cells, and I like to scale it up quite a bit. So it gives it that little crackle effect. So now if you're in Cycles Render, which I am, you go down to here to this button, hit rendered. It is what your scene will look like when you render it. And 0 on the numpad is to go to the camera view, so where your current camera is. So this is what will render, but just slightly higher quality than this. So, nothing really much going on. The floor looks kind of cool. You can see the cube and the reflection. I'm actually, oh yeah, and this is real time, so anything you change in the properties material settings will update real time. I'm going to give it some roughness because I don't really like the hard reflections. Actually, I'm going to go to Beckman and then change it down quite a bit. I say about that is good. So I'm going to change this to white. There we go. Actually, I'm going to give it a slightly yellow tint. So it's more like an actual light. So now, I'm going to show you how to do a basic physics simulation. So you're going to select your floor plane, go over to your tools panel, which you can toggle with T, and go to rigid body tools, add passive, which means it will interact with other rigid bodies, which are basically physics objects, but it will not be affected by gravity or anything like that, and it won't move. So it's just basically an obstacle, and you don't really need to mess with anything because it is a passive. And then you select your cube, add an active, which means it is affected by gravity, which is in the, where is it? I think it's the scene settings. Yeah, you have gravity, and by default it's -8 or 9.81, which is the Earth's gravity, if you didn't know that already. Let's close all these. Okay. And then you can calculate the mass, and there's a bunch of different materials here. I think I want to do, and if you do like something like rubber, it's just the mass, it's not the other properties. But I will, actually, I'm going to try something. I'm going to go rubber. And then over here in the physics panel, it has the rigid body, and I'm going to change the bounciness up. So now if we hit Alt-A to play the animation, As you can see, it didn't bounce. Maybe if we put this up a bit. Actually, I'm not sure if I hit rubber or if I hit something else. No, apparently that's how heavy it is. Here, let me change it to something a bit lighter. Oh wow, it's really dense rubber. Okay. Let's do something like bark on a tree. That's quite a bit lighter. It bounced a little bit. Yeah, and if you hit shift and the left arrow, it goes back to the beginning. So I'm just going to change the mass to 1. And I guess it's just not bouncing. We might want to change the floor to be bouncy as well. And there we go. We have a bouncing cube. So if you go into rendered, I have an AMD graphics card, so it doesn't render this with my GPU. It uses my CPU, which is an i7. And here, let me bring this up. It's running pretty hot right now, probably because I'm streaming and doing this rendering here. But it's a Intel i7 3770 Ivy Ridge, and not working too hard. But yeah. So I kind of like that. You hit A and it bounces a little bit. But I'm gonna select my cube and rotate it a little bit. Maybe a little bit more. So that it'll bounce really weird and hit A on that, and then it kind of falls around like that. So now that'll just be more dynamic. What to do, what to do. Oh, I need to give my cube a material, don't I? Okay, so you're going to go to here and you're going to use select nodes. And I guess we should make it... Let's just use a... actually, I'm going to not try something because I've done this before. We're going to use a mix shader. And the first one is going to be diffuse, which is just like a basic object. And the second one is going to be glass. So it's like a basic object, but it's slightly see-through, and I'm going to select a sharp glass and turn the IQR down to 1, which is the lowest. And what does that go? And the factor is how much it blends. So the lower you go is the more of the first one that shows up, and the higher you go, the more of the second one shows up. So as you can see, basically 0.9 is mostly glass, 90% of the glass shader. So I don't want much diffuse, so I'm going to turn that down. And another cool thing you can do is you can come into here, and all of this stuff is kind of confusing. You just hit this little dot, but you can come to facing. So now faces that are facing you are more of the first one, and faces that are not facing the camera are the second one. So that's kind of cool. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to remove that, so it's just a basic one. I'm going to come to displacement and maybe do a noise texture, which just adds some bumpiness. Scale the detail up, maybe add some distortion as well. So if we go to rendered, ooh, I think that's a little much. I can't tell. Oh, that's because it's having issues with the glass and the diffuse. So it might do that. Just know that you can, at any time... I don't think I'm going to use this glass shader. That didn't do it, did it? Okay, surface, diffuse, there we go. So now it's just a basic diffuse. Still having some issues with the lighting, but that's because this is glossy and the light bounces off of it. But let's go into the render panel, which is the first one. Not panel, but tab in the property settings. And here you have your dimensions. So I'm going to make this 100% of 1280 by 720, which is 720p. And I'm going to make the output in the temp folder, I guess. Actually, no, I'll just go to desktop. Now it's going to be a PNG, and I'm going to include the alpha in it. I'm going to turn the color depth up to 16 and turn the compression down for just a higher quality image. The Gaussian thing is like the corners fade in, so it's darker in the corners, which is a professional-ish thing. And then the samples is probably the most important thing in the cycles render, because it's how many times it reads the pixel according to the lighting. So if you do 10 samples, I can do that right now, I think. Yeah, it's going to be really low quality, it's going to be grainy. That's how the cycles render works, is it does softer and then it gets more detailed as you add more samples. So let's jump it up to 25, and the more samples the longer it takes. Actually, change this to 6 threads. But as you can see, you can already see the texture on the cube much better, and this is starting to look better. Oops. I'm going to actually hit escape to stop that render because my computer hates it. So down here in the performance, what I did, I changed it to use 6 threads out of my 8. So that... what's going on? Using 100% load for some reason. Yeah, now my CPU is running really hot. Let me feel it real quick. Oh, it's fine. So, as you can see, yeah, okay. I changed it to use, I'm actually going to use 5 threads out of 8, so it doesn't crash my whole setup here. I'm going to use color. Oh, hold on. I need to see... Does that change that? Yeah. Sorry if it looks really trippy. Okay, that's that. Luma. There we go. Video level. Okay, sorry about that. I just had to do some color correction for the stream. Let's, oh yeah, the 25 samples instead of the 10. It's much better. Oh yeah, I already did that, didn't I? Yeah, so now we can go up to 50, and it's going to be slower because I'm only using 5 threads now. And each thread takes a box, which you can set the size of the box here. You can set where the order goes. That doesn't really matter. I guess it's just preference. Or you can turn on, I think it's this one? Yeah, progressive refining, I think that's what it's called. It doesn't do the squares, it just renders the whole image, one sample at a time. And it's kind of slower, but it's a little bit higher quality. It just comes down to preference. So yeah, that's rendering with cycles. Rendering with Blender is not really the same at all, because there's no rendered mode here. And right now if I hit F12, nothing renders. That's because the whole material system in Blender in the Blender render is different than the cycles render. So watch out for that. Make sure you're in cycles if you want to render with cycles. Make sure you're in Blender if you want to render with Blender, because everything changes. So Yeah, here, let's just change this to, I'm going to show you how you can do the whole animation. You can use 15 samples. Um, you can change this to AVI Raw, RBG. Black and white's black and white. We're going to only do like 30 frames of this at 20. Actually, let's do 48. Oh gosh, math. 40, 60, 72. 72 still be 3 seconds because we're running at 24 frames per second. And RBG AVI to the desktop. 5 threads. I'm going to go to 50% just because I want this to be kind of quick. And yeah, and then you, for the whole animation, or wherever you have this frame set to, you hit animation, and there it goes. This is just going to be a really low quality bouncing sphere. And as you can see in the next frame, it keeps the image behind it, so you get to see it ripple out like that. And as you can see, every frame the cube is getting slightly lower as it is bouncing towards the ground. Let me take a drink real quick here. So, looking pretty good so far. It's on frame 6. Since this is really low quality, half of 720p at, what was it, 15 samples, the image is really, really bad, but it goes really, really fast. I know I was doing a render where I was using really, really complicated things like particle systems and dynamic paint, and it was full 1080p with 450 samples, and it was taking 2 hours per frame, and it was a 200 frame animation. So by the time it got to frame 50 or so, it crashed, and I decided that I can't do it. So I'm gonna try again later though. So as you can see, the cube is touching the ground. So just in case you were skeptical if it was doing frame by frame, now you can tell. And at any time you can hit escape, and it will stop the render. And if I come out here, it named it 1 to 72 by default because that's how long the animation is, and you can see what we rendered. So that is what we rendered in that little short time. Open this back up. Oh yeah, and so yeah, this is just going to be on my desktop as stream tutorial.blend. This isn't really meant to follow along or anything, but now what I want to do is show you guys something that I made kind of recently. It went off of another guy's tutorial, so it's this, which is a sphere, and then dynamic paint pops up, which is the blue and the green, and it turns into red, and that affects where the particles, which are these objects, grow. So as you can see, I animated the camera, and the depth of field also animates, so it's pretty cool. You see the particles growing on it. I'm gonna have to mess around with it quite a bit. The things in the back are supposed to be dust particles, but I'm seeing now that there are way too many. What frame are we on? 170? Yeah, and then it goes just down here and finishes off. So out of that, I got some pretty awesome screenshots, which one of them is my background here. So I'll show you all of them. This one is edited. That one's the unedited version of that. So as you can see, the things here are dust particles. And this is 1080p, I know, so... Oh, wait. And then that's just another edited version where you can see the dust particles. This one's still loading, I guess. Yeah. This is the original... Hold on. Let me get out of here. Where is it? That's an original, and The edited version of that is here, which is my desktop background. I used some sharpening tools in, what did I use? Photoscape, which is a photo editing software. So I used sharpening tools, and the depth of field, which is this part's sharp and this part is blurry, is actually in Blender. You can select an object to use for the depth of field, and it will focus the camera on that and blur most of the things around it. So that's pretty cool. That's how you get the dust particles to work. That's just another screenshot, and that's the edited version. I kind of like this one because these particles are just floating here on the outside of the sphere. And then you have the things growing on the back side of the sphere that are blurred out. So on the original of that, you see those are floating there in the depth of field, and then these way back there are out. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's not it. You can do a bunch of stuff. I'll go back to our tutorial here. Basically, what you can do, you can hit tab to go into edit mode, and I'm going to get into some modeling here. And essentially with a cube you can't do much. In edit mode you have your vertice select, so you can right click to select a vertice, you can grab it, you can scale it, which doesn't do anything, and you can rotate it, which doesn't do anything too. You can select an edge, and you can grab it, and you can rotate it, and you can scale it. And same with faces, rotate, grab, and scale. But another cool thing you can do in edit mode is you can like take a vertex and hit E to extrude. Oh, that's a face. But you can hit E to extrude, so it extrudes the face outward, and that is essentially how you model. You can also do this with edges. You can just extrude that one edge, Control Z, and you can do that with vertices. You can just select the vertex and extrude it as a line. So that's pretty cool. Now you might be thinking, how do you model such complex things by just extruding faces with a cube? Well, what you can do, you can hit Control and R, just tap those. Well, hold Control, tap R, and then you're in the mode. And it's an edge loop tool. So it cuts an edge loop, so I can click here and it makes an edge loop, and I can move it around here wherever I want it. So let's say I want it there. And then this creates a whole new face that I can then extrude from that. So I'm going to undo that. And now you can also hit Control R, and the purple line is where the thing is going to go. So if you hit scroll wheel up, you can make more cuts and less cuts, I guess, if you really wanted to. Not less than one, though. If you do that, it just goes away. So let's just do 4 cuts here, and then hit it again. And then 4 more cuts on that side. And then 1, 2, 3. 4 more on that side. So now we have a pretty complex grid. So we can select a face and then shift right click another face and more faces and extrude those and come up with some pretty abstract objects, and then scale those up, rotate them, grab them around, whatever we need to do. So let's say you want to extrude, oh gosh, like these 4 faces here. You could hit E, but then as you can see, when you scale them, or if you select one and grab it, the whole thing moves. And you don't want that. What you can do, you can come over here to the Tools tab and hit Extrude Individual, which extrudes them as individual parts, so you can move them afterwards, which is also pretty useful. These are already individual because they weren't touching. So that's essentially how you model. You can also go into sculpt mode down here, and you know, right now I have the draw brush. You can do a grab brush where you just grab parts of it and they go out or in. You can use a smooth brush and it'll smooth it out. So as you can see, the corners are getting smoothed, but it's not very high quality because there aren't very many polys, as we call them in modeling, on this cube. Actually, I might have dynamic on. Let me check. Topology. No. Okay. So right now I'm going to show you Actually, first, I'm going to show you modifiers. So if we go back to object mode, there's a bunch of modifiers here in the tool, kind of tool wrench thing. And I'm going to show you the multi-res. And if you hit subdivide, it makes it smoother, what it considers smoother. Or you can go over here to simple, and it just adds faces. Does it? It should. Maybe it doesn't here, but as you can see, there are definitely more faces there than here. So with that, you can go into sculpt mode and draw on it, and you can make much more complex things and subdivide it even more and add more. So essentially in modeling, what they say is best is to start with the most simple things, like with the least number of faces or polys, and then work your way up. Or work your way down, I guess. So then you can do all that. It's great. Now, another thing which is kind of, I think it's unique to Blender, is this button here, Dynamic Topology, which adds triangles, which are faces, as you paint. So also if you make this smaller, it will add smaller faces where you want it, and then even smaller after that. So if you make your brush really big, yeah, it's gonna make some highly detailed faces. If you make your brush really small, it will add quite a bit. So as you can see from our basic cube with 6 faces on it, we now have 74,000 just because of dynamic topology. And I hit tab, and edit mode is trying to render all of those faces that I added, and as you can see, it doesn't like it. So I'm going to hit A twice to select all of it, and delete all of it. So now I don't even have it there. Actually, I think I have an edge that got away. X faces, X edges, yeah. So now I guess it's not an object. Sweet. So I'm going to go back into object mode and add a mesh for a UV sphere. Oh, never mind. Shift C to move my cursor to the center. Then add a UV sphere. Grab it on the Z axis so we can see it in the scene. And then I'm going to come over here in object mode, which we're already in, and hit smooth shading. So now if we go to rendered view, it's just a basic diffuse, but it's that. And then if I go to flat, you can see the individual faces. If I zoom in here, you can see all of the little squares that make up the sphere. There you go. Now you can see it. But if you hit smooth, it's just a smooth shade, which is pretty much what we want. So now if we hit F12 there, we can render that out nice and easy. Or if I come here to sampling and turn it up to, say, 75 samples is my fixed 5, okay. As you can see, I'm just going to wait this out a little bit. Not a while, though. It will be much higher quality. So, yeah, you can see the sphere there. There's still a little bit of mess down here where the light bounces off. So we can turn this up to double it and be 150. So it'll take each pixel, I believe, 150 times and take the average RBGA value and put that in that pixel. That's how I think it works. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, as you can see, this shading over here is getting much smoother. And I'll just zoom in. You can see it changing and getting more defined. So that's essentially just taught you modeling there. Now I'm going to go through something that most people don't really need to know. Why is that still there? I'm going to delete that. Delete. Okay. Well, anyways. That you don't really need to know, but I think it would be really cool to know, so you can make something like I did here. So what you're going to do is you're going to select your sphere, and you're going to add dynamic paint canvas, and make it weight. It doesn't matter if you don't really know, and then hit the plus button here under dynamic paint output, so it makes a vertex group for the paint. Now you're going to want to add a plane, grab it up, and now we're going to get into some animating. So with your plane selected, preferably the size of your sphere. There we go. So it's as big as your sphere, and then you're going to want to hit the I button, location, and then grab Z, move it through, oh no, and then go to frame. Since doing a 72 frame, we're going to move this to frame, it doesn't really matter, I'm just going to go, why is that moving? Oh, that's our cube that's somehow still there. I'm going to go to frame 12, grab it on the Z axis below, and hit I location. So now if we hit shift back arrow, or shift left arrow, hit Alt A to play it, it will move through. So that doesn't really do anything for us. And actually what I'm going to do is go to the top here, to this button, and hit on animation, scroll in a little bit, and here you can see all your keyframes. This is the total, and then this is location, and this is X, Y, and Z. So what you're going to want to do is grab this, hit G, or select the ones that you want. It's hierarchical, I think is how you pronounce it. So if I select, this, no, it just does the whole thing. Okay. If you had more than one object, it would be different. And then hit G, just like you would an object, and grab it down the frames. So let's go to about here. Actually, no, we want to make it grow for most of the animation. So now if we hit Alt A, it moves much more slowly through the sphere, which is really what we want. So if you hit this, go back to default, dynamic paint, brush, add brush to our plane, make sure it's on plane, and you're going to want to make it proximity, and I'm going to scale that down a bit. So as you can see, when we play that now, it leaves that paint on it, which is going to be where our particles are. You don't need to change anything other than that. So constant color ramp. No, we don't need that. Smooth. Alright. So now we can go to here, go to the cache. We don't really need to do that because it is very, very simple. But, yeah. I think we should, just because. So we're going to say that ends on 72, which is good. Substeps, we're going to want 5. I think that's the minimum, isn't it? I don't know. But it just does smoother motion. So I'm also going to add a subsurf. No, not a subsurf, sorry. A multi-res to this. Make it simple. Subdivide it a few times. What's the rendering? Smooth? I guess it's just not. But that'll make the... Why does it do that? Oh. That down. Well, anyways, that's just not gonna work. Wait, what if I make it a Catmull Clark? There we go, that's what I wanted. So it'll just make the paint a bit smoother. So that's good. And now we're gonna want to go into physics. You can close out these tabs that you don't need and go to the bottom one, which is the dynamic paint cache. and say file name. I don't even need a file name. Hit bake, and the number there is a percentage, and I'll just run through. And now, just to prove it, I'm gonna select my, and then if you play it, it adds the paint there. But you don't actually need the plane there anymore. So I'm gonna select it, hit M, and move it to the second layer. So now it's not in this layer, and even if we play it now, the paint still goes on there. So now, what are we going to do with the dynamic paint? We're going to go to our particle system tab, which is just the little shiny things. Sorry, I had to take a drink. And add a particle system. And right now, I'm going to change it, the end, to 72. Actually, that doesn't really matter yet, but I'm just going to show you what a particle system does. It just emits particles from the object. And now I'm going to show you how we can use our dynamic paint to edit those particles. So I'm going to not do that. Go to vertex groups and density. Select your DP weight. So now the particles are more dense, less dense where the paint is. Maybe that didn't do anything. It usually does stuff. Maybe it doesn't for particles, maybe it has to be an object. But definitely length is going to be the one we're going to be using. Oh yeah, you can't change these particles. Okay, that makes sense. Just because they're just particles. They're not any objects. So, did I need hair here? Yes, hair. That was it. So, as you can see, their length is dependent on the paint, and it animates it. And now, if we add density, DP weight, it'll be, actually that doesn't change anything. Silly me. Change that. DP weight negative. So now they will be shorter where the dynamic paint is. And I guess you can kind of mess around with that. It's kind of cool, but we don't need it. So now I'm going to go to, down here are your layers. I'm going to go to layer 3. I'm going to get out of camera mode and add, let's say, a sphere. And then hit tab to go into edit mode. And then hit A to deselect all of the faces. I'm just going to shift select some random faces on here. Oh man. Okay, let me just get all around. Almost done here. Let's get some on the top. Some on the bottom. Okay, and I'm going to go to extrude individual and make them not that big. Where do I, okay. Here, and then scale the end faces down. Oh, go down here to this with the two spheres in the middle point and change it to individual origins, and now scale them down so that they look like spikes. So now you have a little cool randomized spike ball thing. And then you want to go back into object mode with tab and scale that down. I think you want to turn on smooth. And now go back to your first layer, which is where your sphere is with the hair on it. Select that, go back to your particle system. And now go to render, the render tab, object, and select your sphere 1, which is that. Now, as you can see when you play it now, they get bigger where the paint is, and they don't grow where the paint isn't. So that's really, really useful. Advanced here. And as you can see here, we can change how far away they are and how big they get. So I'm going to change that to 0.5, so that, as you can see, they're not as big and not as dense. Now you want to do it from faces, but you don't want even distribution. You want it to be as random as possible, so also hit random. And you want rotation, random, and you want object Z, so they rotate on the Z-axis randomly. And you don't really need physics. You could use it for things, but I'm not going to. And you can just mess around with the tangents and the rotation, and they're random on everything. Oh, in physics you want to mess with size, because that, as you can see, drastically changes it. 0.1, now below that, 0.05, and then hit random, and that changes how random they are. So if we zoom in here and load that, as you can see, some are actually you can't really see it. Gonna have to change that down still. As you can see, some are bigger than others. You can actually turn the random up so you can get a lot of variation. And so that's how you load those on there. And I'm going to add more, I think. So you can change this 2500 maybe? Yeah, that looks good. Maybe so you can tell it's a sphere. And now if we hit F12, as you can see, two things are wrong. I know that before it renders. So, for one, we can see the sphere, which we don't really want. And two, well, I guess this is kind of an issue. You can't really see that, but that's because of the resolution. So right now it just looks like a ball with a bunch of balls on it, which is not what we wanted. So now we want to go back to our particle object and add a material to that. And I'm just going to mess around here with glass, sharp, get some roughness on it. That doesn't do anything to sharp, I forgot. Change that down, go to Beckman. Okay, and then IQR. No, that's the reflectivity, which I just want a little bit reflect there. So now I'm going to show you the camera, because I don't think the camera's in a very good place. You want to hit N to bring up this, and lock camera to view. So now if you zoom in and pan and rotate, it'll follow. The camera will follow. So you can uncheck that if you want to move your view in the camera. So now if we hit F12, it'll still be low quality, but it'll be more zoomed in. So now you can see that they are made of glass. And now you can start to see the individual spikes, which is kind of cool. So as you can see, yeah, it looks much, much better than the other one. But you can still see the sphere, which I guess in some cases isn't bad, but in this case, I don't like it. So you can select your sphere with the particle system and hit, I think, render and emitter and uncheck emitter. So now, if we render it, as you can see, they will just be floating, which is nice. Actually, just so we can get a good representation, I'm going to turn that down to 75 samples, so that we can try to get a whole image rendered here. Probably not going to happen, because this is more complex than just that cube or that sphere that we had earlier. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So, I guess you can't really see it here, but, yeah, I'm going to take a break here, but I am going to add an empty, just plain axes, and I am going to move it to the front, grab it up so that it's kind of right there, so that we can now, hold on, sorry, lost my words. I'm gonna go to my camera, select my camera by clicking on the border, or you can select it from here, and go to depth of field and focus on the empty. You can name all the items, but you know, I don't. And then you can change the size of the depth of the field. Size of the depth of the field. Well, anyways, now if you go to rendered, what should happen is the front ones around it should be really clear, and as you can see, the floor is blurry, but these are more clear. So that's what depth of field is making the things, its focus, essentially. So, yeah, I'm gonna render one picture. I'm gonna leave my computer for just a few minutes, I guess, because it won't take very long because it's not a very big picture. And I'm going to show you what the depth of field looks like with that render. So yeah, I will be right back. Just, I guess, enjoy watching this whole thing render.